Ionescu. She got it.
And Stewart doing it all.
That is what makes her special.
Welcome back to Liberty FM. The Liberty are finally starting to look like a team that's finding its way. But somehow, after winning 7 of their last 8, there are still more questions than answers. From Betnijah Laney-Hamilton's departure and the communication surrounding it, to Marine Fauthoux' emergence, Rebecca Allen's impact, and the way this team is finally figuring out how to use its big three, there's a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. Are the New York Liberty struggling to find their identity? It's a question we could legitimately ask ourselves a few days after the team announced that Betnijah Laney-Hamilton had been waived. By the time it happened, it was becoming almost inevitable. Betnijah had been a DNP for the 8th consecutive game, and the last appearance in the Liberty uniform had come all the way back on July 12th. But seeing the announcement still hurt, because Betnijah is not just another player who happened to be on the roster. Outside of Sabrina, she was the second longest tenured player of the Brooklyn era, joining the Liberty in 2021 after winning the Most Improved Player award during that incredible 2020 bubble season. She immediately became the leader of a young team that was coming off one of the worst records in the league history. She earned an all-star spot that year and finished the season by nearly carrying New York past Phoenix in the playoff, making bucket after bucket before the Liberty ultimately lost by 1 in a game that was also marked by a huge officiating mistake. After an injury-plagued 2022 season, her role changed in 2023, when the New York Liberty changed dimensions with the arrival of Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, and Courtney Vandersloot. Betnijah embraced that change. She became the ultimate 3-and-D player. The player who did all the things that didn't necessarily show up in the box score. The player who defended the other team's best perimeter scorer, hit the open three, made the extra pass, took charges, fought for loose ball, and did whatever the team needed. And in doing so, she became one of the biggest fan favorites on this team. We all remember Game 2 of the 2024 finals. Betnijah was playing through excruciating pain, and somehow she kept going. She gave New York everything she had that night and helped the Liberty get the win they desperately needed against Minnesota. Without that sacrifice, there's a very real argument that the Liberty don't win that championship. And then there was that viral video of the little girl walking down the streets of Brooklyn chanting about how good Betnijah Laney was. It was such a simple moment, but it captured something that so many of us felt. We love Betnijah, not just because of what she did on a basketball court, but because of who she was. Born and raised in Philly by a mother who had played professional basketball herself, Betnijah carried that toughness, that discipline, and that sense of responsibility with her. And New York embraced her. She embraced New York right back. She became involved in the community. She represented Brooklyn. She represented the Liberty. And when you watch her play, you saw somebody who seemed to understand what wearing that jersey meant. We liked her grit, her toughness, her tenacity, and the fact that she never seemed afraid of the moment. And honestly, I think a lot of us just wish her story with the Liberty would have had a different ending. And that's where my frustration begins. Because I'm not necessarily angry that the Liberty ultimately decided to move on from Betnijah. I'm angry about how we got to this situation, and I'm especially frustrated by the communication. Because let's go back to the beginning of the season. The Liberty had just re-signed Betnijah for the 2026 season, and this is what Jonathan Kolb, the team general's manager, said at the time. Betnijah Laney-Hamilton is foundational to who we are as an organization. He called her a player who was trusted and respected by her teammates and their fan base, and feared by the opponents she takes on every night. And then he said something that, looking back now, is particularly difficult to hear. Betnijah is as healthy as she's been in years, and her presence elevates everything we do on both ends of the floor. And finally, quite simply, the WNBA is better when Betnijah is part of it. And having her back on the floor means a great deal to this franchise. Those were not the words of an organization that sounded like it was preparing to move on from Betnijah. Those were the words of an organization telling its fans, she's back, she's important, she's part of us. And then just a few months later, she's gone. And to be fair, things changed. Betnijah came back from a serious knee injury. Her role diminished. She went from starter to reserve to eventually being completely out of the rotation. And Chris DeMarco repeatedly explained those DNPs by talking about a shortened rotation, the team's depth, and roles changing from game to game. He told us that he still had confidence in her. He told us that she would get another opportunity, but that opportunity never came. And eventually we learned that there was more to the story. After Saturday's practice, DeMarco finally gave us a little more insight into what had actually been happening behind the scenes. He acknowledged that Betnijah had expressed a desire for other opportunities and a larger role. He said the Liberty had tried to find the right trade partner for her, but ultimately couldn't make that happen. And that is important because it tells us that this wasn't simply about a coach deciding game by game that Betnijah wasn't part of his rotation. There was a larger conversation happening. Betnijah wanted to play, she wanted to contribute, she wanted a bigger role, and the Liberty apparently agreed that she deserved the opportunity to find that somewhere else. And that's what happened, I can understand it. But this is where I think we have to hold Chris DeMarco accountable, because looking back at everything he told us over those previous weeks, there are some contradictions that are difficult to ignore. When Betnijah started accumulating DNPs, the explanation was largely about basketball, the rotation, the depth of the team, the fact that roles could change from one game to another. DeMarco repeatedly talked about still having confidence in her. He talked about her getting another opportunity. And as a fan, you naturally interpreted that as, this is a temporary basketball decision. She's still part of the plan. But now we know there was another layer to the story. Betnijah had expressed that she wanted other opportunities and a larger role. The Liberty had been trying to find a trade partner for her. DeMarco has now acknowledged that he and Jonquel Kolb were in communication about the situation throughout. And that's why I think DeMarco deserves some criticism. Not necessarily because what he said was false. It's entirely possible that he genuinely did have confidence in Betnijah. It's entirely possible that her role really was affected by the rotation and by the competition for minutes. But those explanations clearly weren't telling us the whole story. And that's an important distinction, because when you repeatedly tell fans that a player is simply out of the rotation, that she still has your confidence, and that another opportunity is coming, while there is simultaneously a conversation happening about finding her another team, fans are naturally going to feel like they weren't getting the complete picture. And ultimately, the opportunity never came in New York. She didn't suddenly return to the rotation. She didn't get the minutes we were told might come. Instead, she was waived. So when I look back at DeMarco's comments now, I don't necessarily think he lied to us. I think he didn't tell us enough. And maybe that's because coaches are never going to reveal every front office conversation involving a player. Maybe that's because there were things he simply couldn't say publicly. But that's also why I think the organization needed to communicate better as a whole, because DeMarco became the face of a decision that was bigger than him. And when fans were left with 8 consecutive DNPs, explanations about rotation and depth, and then suddenly learned that Betnijah had actually been looking for another opportunity, it was inevitable that some of that frustration was going to land on the head coach. And then came Sunday. Betnijah had just been claimed by the Washington Mystics. She did not play because she had literally just joined the team, but she was already around the Mystics, interacting with the players and taking on that veteran mentorship role before the game. And honestly, saying that made me happy, because this is what Betnijah is. She's a veteran. She's a champion. She's been through everything. She's been an all-star. She's been an all-defensive player. She's been through injuries, adversity, and championship pressure. And Washington immediately saw value in that. They saw somebody who could help their young players. They saw a leader. They saw somebody who could contribute even before stepping on the court. And I really hope Betnijah gets exactly what she was looking for in Washington. A fresh start, a bigger opportunity, a place where she feels valued. And then before Sunday's game against Las Vegas, Chris DeMarco's name was announced inside Barclays Center, and he was booed loudly. Now, I'm not going to pretend that every single person who booed him was doing it specifically because of Betnijah. But let's be honest, the timing made the reason pretty obvious. This wasn't a random night where fans suddenly decided they didn't like their head coach. This came just days after Betnijah was waived. A player who had become so deeply connected to this franchise, who had given everything to this organization, and who had helped deliver the first championship in franchise history. So when DeMarco's name was announced, the fans made their feelings known. And after the game, he was asked about it. To his credit, he handled the question as carefully as he could. He didn't take the bait. He didn't criticize the fans. He didn't get defensive. He essentially deflected the question and moved the conversation back towards the team. And I understand why he did that. But I also think it's telling that this is where we've arrived. Because when your own home crowd boos you before a game, that's feedback. Maybe it's unfair. Maybe DeMarco is being blamed for a decision that involved much more than just him. Because let's remember, Jonquel Kolb is the general manager. This is an organizational decision. But that's exactly why I keep coming back to communication. If fans are angry enough to boo their head coach because of the departure of one of your players, maybe that's a sign that the organization hasn't done enough to explain what actually happened. Looking at Betnijah on Sunday, standing with the Mystics, already acting like the veteran leader we know she is, maybe it was exactly what she needed. But I still wish the Liberty had handled the journey to that point differently, because the end of a relationship matters, and Betnijah deserved a better ending in New York. Not necessarily a different basketball decision, just a better ending. And the fans deserve better communication too. Because when you ask fans to invest emotionally in your players, your team, and your organization, you can't expect them not to care when one of those players leaves. And Betnijah wasn't just another player. For a lot of us, Betnijah was a part of what made the New York Liberty feel like the New York Liberty. And maybe that's why this one hurt so much. Now, what I don't want Liberty fans to do is go after Marine Fauthoux. She deserves a spot. And to be fair, if you've been following her game, whether in the French League, the Turkish League, the Euro League, or with the French national team, you wouldn't be surprised by what she's capable of doing. She grew up in a basketball family in a town that dominated French basketball for many, many years. She was born for this. DeMarco had nothing but positive things to say about her and what she brings to this team, and his most recent comments were probably the most telling because he was praising her for all the little things she does. He talked about how defensively she's always in the right spots. She's early when teams get into the pocket. Offensively, she can set a defender up in the pick and roll, get the defense out of position, attack the gap, force two defenders to come over, and then find the open shooter. She does all these little things that really help you win basketball games in the end. And that's what we love in basketball players. There's a reason she was a starter for France at the Olympics. The developmental player contract she accepted was a wise decision considering she was coming back from an ACL injury. But if she was able to regain her level, you knew the Liberty were eventually going to find themselves in a difficult situation. And that's exactly what happened. Marine had reached the maximum number of games she was eligible to play under that contract, and she had already committed to joining the French national team to begin preparing for the World Cup. But now that she has a standard player contract with the Liberty, she'll probably be able to join the national team later. And honestly, I think this is a pretty good problem for the Liberty to have, because during this really interesting stretch where the Liberty have won 7 of their last 8 games, Marine Fauthoux has brought something that the other rotational guards don't necessarily have. And don't be fooled by a relatively small stature. She's a feisty defender. She's an excellent rebounder, averaging more than 3 rebounds per game during that stretch. She has the ability to control the game in the half court and show tremendous composure coming off the pick and roll, finding Marine Johannes over and over again, feeding her for free after free during that incredible performance against the Las Vegas Aces this past weekend. But she also has the ability to push the tempo and allow the Liberty to transition from defense to offense faster and more effectively. We saw that in the Liberty's first home game against the Seattle Storm, and we saw it again during their most recent road game against the Los Angeles Sparks. Those are 2 very different dimensions that she can bring to this team, and that's what makes her so interesting. It will be fascinating to see what her role looks like as we get closer to the playoff, especially if the Liberty are able to get Leonie Fibish and Satou Sabally back in the healthy column, because Marine Fauthoux and Pauline Astier, besides being both French, bring very different style to the point guard position, and that gives DeMarco options. Ultimately, Marine Fauthoux is a good problem to have. She has earned her spot, she has shown that she belongs, and if the Liberty can figure out how to maximize what she brings while integrating everyone else back into the rotation, she could become a crucial piece of this team's playoff rotation. The Liberty lately are flying high. They've won 7 of their last 8 games, and since Rebecca Allen was introduced into the starting lineup, she has brought us back to that 2021 version of herself, that versatile player who can cause disruption on defense and be assigned to a variety of players thanks to her length and versatility. She could also provide some valuable threes when needed, especially when opponents are primarily focused on the Liberty star players, and the numbers over her last 8 games back that up. Rebecca is averaging 8 points, 3.3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal in 24 minutes per game, while shooting 46.2% from the field and 40% from three-point range. She's also scored in double figures in 4 of those 8 games, including 13 points in both of the Liberty's recent matchups against Las Vegas. What I particularly like about what Rebecca is bringing right now is that she doesn't need a high usage rate to make an impact. She can defend, rebound, knock down an open three, and make the little plays that help you win games. And when you have Sabrina, Stewie, JJ, and the other offensive weapons on this roster, having a player who can quietly give you all of that is incredibly valuable. So kudos to you, Rebecca Allen, because after a tough start of the season and a lot of DNPs, she showed up, stay ready, and now she's delivering for this team and bringing something positive. And I hope that she could continue that way, especially after announcing recently that this season would be a final season in the WNBA after many, many years of service and being in this league since 2015. Thank you, Rebecca, for all that you've been giving to this team and to the W, and I hope this final year goes on the high with everything that you can still bring to this team. Thanks, Rebecca. The other thing to be happy about is that the coaching staff seems to have finally figured out how to best utilize our big three. As exceptional as Jonquel Jones is as a three-point shooter, and we know she can absolutely punish teams from beyond the arc, I still want to see more of JJ in the paint, because there are very few players in this league who can stop Jonquel Jones one-on-one when she gets the ball in the right position. Not even Asia Wilson. And we've seen it before. Go back to the 2024 finals against Minnesota. When the Liberty consistently got JJ the ball inside, she was absolutely dominant. Once she gets that deep, you have to make a decision. Do you try to handle her one-on-one, or do you send help and risk opening up one of the Liberty's shooters? So why wouldn't you want to create more of those situations? And what's really starting to get exciting is the connection we're seeing between JJ and Stewie. These are two players who can score in completely different ways, but who also have the passing ability and basketball IQ to find each other. And this isn't just something we're imagining from watching the games. According to the player-to-player tracking on metrics, Stewie has assisted JJ on 28 made baskets this season, which represents 30% of all the assisted field goals JJ has made. In other words, more than 1 out of every 3 assisted basket that JJ has made has come from Stewie. That's significant, and it tells you that this isn't some connection that we're just starting to discover. It's already one of the most important passing relationships on this team. But I still think there's another level to it, because think about the problems that it creates for a defense. If JJ is posting up, you cannot simply send help from Stewie's defenders, because Stewie can punish you from outside. And if Stewie has the ball, you can't lose JJ, because she can pop out and knock down a free, or steal a defender inside and make you pay. You have to account for both of them. And when they start moving, screening, cutting, and looking for each other, it becomes extremely difficult for a defense to anticipate what's coming next. We've seen flashes of it already, and we've seen some beautiful examples recently, but I think the Liberty can still make this even more of a weapon, because having two elite front court players who can both score inside, outside, pass, and force defenses to make difficult decisions is an absolute nightmare to defend. And that's why I want to see JJ get more touches in the paint. Not because I want to take the free away from her, quite the opposite. Her 3-point shooting is what makes her so difficult to defend. But if you can establish JJ inside first, force the defense to collapse, and then allow her to step outside and shoot, or find Stewie, Sabrina, or one of the other shooters, that's when you really start to unlock what this offense can be. And that's what I'm excited about. The JJ and Stewie connection is already real. The numbers prove that. But if the Liberty can contribute to build on it, particularly by getting JJ into those deeper positions in the paint, I think we're going to see an even more dangerous version of this team as we get closer to the playoff. Because when you have JJ and Stewie attacking a defense together, the defense should know what's coming next. And that's exactly the kind of offensive identity that can win you a championship. In searching for this Liberty identity, one fact that I think we could all agree on is that Sabrina Ionescu needs to be the primary ball handler. Betnijah did a wonderful job in Sam's absence while she was injured, and Marine Fauthoux has shown that she can be a very solid backup coming off the bench. But Sabrina is one of the leaders of this team, and she can score in multiple ways in a way that the other guards on this roster simply cannot. Yes, Sab can be very effective off the ball. We've seen her setting a lot of screens for her teammates in this new system. But ultimately, when you need points, Sabrina is still the best option this team has, and she's been showing that lately. We've seen it against Dallas, Chicago, and Phoenix, where she demonstrated her ability to take over offensively. I particularly enjoy seeing her getting to the paint more. Her crossover, her physicality, and her touch around the rim make her extremely difficult for opposing guards to stop. And what's been really encouraging is the improvement in her efficiency. Over the last 8 games, Sabrina is averaging around 20.5 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting roughly 45% from the field and 38% from free. And I think the numbers tell the story of what we're seeing with our eyes. She's not forcing as many shots. She's taking what the defense is giving her, and she's allowing the game to come to her. That's exactly the version of Sabrina I want to see going into the playoff, because she doesn't need to take 25 shots every night. She could give you 20 plus points while creating for her teammates and doing it efficiently. That's when this Liberty offense becomes really dangerous. You already have JJ and Stewie creating problems, and now you have Sabrina making the right reasons instead of feeling like she has to carry the entire offense. A Sab playing with that kind of efficiency is a very good sign for what could be coming in the playoff. And unfortunately, that good news has been somehow overshadowed by the fact that she wasn't selected by USA Basketball for the September World Cup. And listen, this team is stacked. There are only so many spots, and somebody is always going to be left out. Some people will argue that Sabrina missing the first part of the season because of injury hurt her chances, and that's certainly a reasonable argument. But you could also point to Kelsey Plum and Afisa Collier, who both missed significant portion of the season as well. Ultimately, my guess is that Kara Lawson wanted to prioritize a certain defensive profile with this roster, and that's where the debate becomes interesting, because I don't think there's any question that Sabrina belongs in the conversation offensively, but as disappointing as it is for her, there's one silver lining for the Liberty. Sabrina is going to have the opportunity to rest, recover, and prepare herself alongside JJ for the remainder of the season, and honestly, that could be a blessing in disguise. Because if we get this version of Sabrina, this version of JJ, and this version of Stewie all playing their best basketball at the right time, then maybe the Liberty's biggest advantage heading into the playoff won't be one individual player. It will be finally figuring out how to make all three of them work at their absolute best together. Now, how can I not mention Breanna Stewart, who is playing at an MVP level, right? Her first season with the Liberty in 2023, which led to an MVP trophy, was a masterpiece, and it wasn't going to be easy to top that. But this season has been much of the same, with Stewie actually scoring even more than she did during that MVP campaign. I honestly don't know where the Liberty will be right now without her. She's scoring in multiple ways, trying to grab every rebound imaginable, trying to cover every hole in the Liberty's defense, and above all, leading this team by example. And how can you not give 100% when you see a teammate like her giving so much? My only concern though is how much we've been asking from her. She's been playing around 34 minutes per game, which is a huge workload for someone who's going to be expected to play a major role for Team USA at the FIBA World Cup in September. And that matters, because I just don't want Stewie to be great right now. I want Stewie to be at full force when the playoffs start. And there's actually another reason to be excited about her right now. Her three-point shot finally seems to be coming back. Remember how bad it got earlier this season? Through her first 17 games, she was shooting just 17.6% from free. And she eventually told Andrew Wade to start finding her every time one of the threes came up short. And I love that mentality. Instead of hiding from the problem, she attacked it. Wade has been working with her on her trajectory and more importantly on making sure she has enough power coming from her legs, especially when she's tired. And Stewie has basically turned those short misses into motivation. And we're starting to see the results. Over this recent stretch, she's been knocking down multiple threes in several games again, including 2 for 4 against Dallas, 2 for 4 against Chicago, and 2 for 4 against Los Angeles. That's something we simply weren't seeing consistently earlier in the season. And that's a huge development for this team, because when Stewie is hitting that free, you cannot just sag off her and pack the paint. You have to respect her outside. And if you have to respect Stewie outside while also worrying about Jonquel doing inside, Sabrina attacking the basket, and all the shooting around them, suddenly the Liberty become a completely different offensive problem. That's why I'm so encouraged by this version of Stewie. She's already doing everything else. She's scoring, rebounding, defending, and carrying this team when it needs her. And if that three-point shot continues to come back, it could be the final piece that takes her game and this Liberty team to another level. But now it's on the coaching staff to manage her workload, because we've seen what Stewie can give you when she has to carry a team. What I want to see now is whether the Liberty can finally build a team around her that doesn't require her to carry so much. Give her the right minutes. Let the big three do their thing together. Let the depth do this job. And most importantly, make sure we have a healthy, rested Breanna Stewart when the games really matter. Because if Stewie is playing at this level in the playoff and a three-point shot is back where it needs to be, I don't know how many teams in this league are going to want to see the Liberty in the playoff series. And finally, in true Liberty fashion, I cannot leave this episode without a little bit of skepticism, because honestly, Betnijah's departure affected me. It made me nostalgic for what has been built over the years and made me think about what the New York Liberty actually represent. The Liberty are one of the WNBA's two original franchises alongside the LA Sparks, and they've certainly had their share of ups and downs. They spent years building a basketball culture in front of sold-out crowds at Madison Square Garden, only to fall short of the ultimate goal, losing 4 WNBA finals between 1997 and 2002. Then they were essentially punished by their former ownership and moved to Rochester before eventually being bought by Joe and Clara Husai in 2019. The plan was to finally bring the Liberty to Brooklyn and give them a new home at Barclays Center. But COVID robbed the franchise of the opportunity to properly launch that new era in 2020, and the pandemic continued to impact attendance during the 2021 and 2022 season. Felicia and I were season ticket holders in 2021, and we were among the roughly 1,400 fans scattered throughout Barclays Centers, an arena that can normally accommodate close to 18,000 people for a basketball game. It was a completely different atmosphere from the packed arena we see today, an arena that has over the years become an epicenter of inclusivity and a celebration of multiculturalism. Look at what the Liberty have created, from Ellie to the timeless torches representing everyday New Yorkers of all ages and backgrounds, to the women at the forefront of this organization who are leading the franchise on the business, creative, youth and basketball sides. Look at the way we've created events for the community and theme nights that celebrate the different cultures, community, and businesses of this borough. All of those elements helped create a movement and transform a franchise that was reportedly purchased for somewhere between $10 and $15 million into one that is now valued at around $600 million. That's an incredible accomplishment. Obviously, none of that happens without a great product on the court. Sabrina Ionescu and Betnijah Laney started something. Then the arrival of Sandy Brandello, Stewie, JJ, and Courtney Vandersloot took it to another level. But what fans recognized beyond all the superstars were the blue-collar players, the players who did all the little things that helped this team succeed. I'm thinking about Kayla Foran, Leonie Fibish, Niara Sabali, Kennedy Burke, and to some extent players like Jalen Sherrod, Natasha Clyde, and Isabel Harrison. Players with grit, players with personality, players who are tough on the court, but who are also willing to be involved in the community and vulnerable about their own struggles. Those are the type of players you can see yourself in, because in their own way, they capture what it takes to succeed in New York, even if they weren't born here. And that's why I think the Liberty have to be careful about what they're building. There was a time when this was a team that was feared and respected on the court. Now sometimes you feel like the other team has a chance to win because they know the Liberty's flaws and know how to capitalize on them. When Becky Hammond decided last Sunday to rest Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young, obviously there was disappointment because we weren't going to get the matchup we were expecting. But my immediate second thought was, please don't let the Liberty make this a game. And thankfully they didn't. It was actually nice to see a 40-point rout and to have a relatively easy game from beginning to end. But think about that for a second. Our first instinct shouldn't be to hope that the Liberty don't make a game out of it when the other team is resting 3 of its best players. Yeah, we should celebrate what has happened recently. The Liberty are figuring things out. They're turning things around. The team looks happier. They look more focused. They're following the coach's instructions better. There's clearly something different about this group right now. But let's also put this winning streak into perspective. This stretch included Dallas without Paige Beckers. It included LA, which has one of the worst defenses in the league and was without Kelsey Plum. It included 2 games against Seattle, which is at the bottom of the standings and out of the playoff race. Chicago is still trying to find its identity. Phoenix is struggling right now. And then there was Las Vegas without its big 3. So Tuesday's game against the Indiana Fever is going to be a very interesting measuring stick because that's when we'll get another indication of where this team really is and whether it's actually heading in the right direction. And regardless of whether Leonie Fibish and Satsu Sabali return this season, this team needs to build a strong identity. If those two were healthy and available, maybe this entire debate wouldn't even be happening. But they haven't been available for a long time. And at some point, we have to learn how to build something without them. Which brings me back to the 2 people at the center of this discussion. Is Chris DeMarco the right person to lead this team? I still have my reservation. But is this all his fault? Or does Jonathan Kolb, the general manager, eventually have to take some of the blame? Because at the end of the day, he's the one building the roster. Kolb we trust became a motto that so many Liberty fans embrace because of his ability to scout international talent and navigate an incredibly complicated salary cap. But the team has also become a victim of its own success. The expansion drafts took players like KT and Niara Sabali away from us. That had an impact. But at the same time, Kolb hasn't necessarily been able to replace those players with others who bring that same toughness and physicality. And over the last 2 years, this team has too often been described as soft, undisciplined, slow, and unable to match the athleticism of teams like Dallas or Golden State. So yes, you can blame DeMarco for some of his rotations, you can question some of his decisions, but then you also have to ask, does his philosophy actually match the players he has at his disposal? That's what we're going to find out over the next few months, and I'm pretty sure the fans are going to let him know what they think along the way, because that's New York, and as Stewie once said, welcome to New York. And that's it for this episode of Liberty FM. There are reasons to be encouraged by what we've seen from this team lately, but there are still plenty of questions that need to be answered before the playoffs. The Liberty are finding their identity. Now we have to find out what that identity really is, and that's starting tonight against the Indiana Fever away from the Barclays Center. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time. And as we always say, let's go Liberty!